Hello, 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 people, and welcome back to another episode of the USL show. Oh, is it great to be back? And kind of a full slate. We got a whole bunch of people here, some faces that you didn't know existed for a while, but a voice that you've heard a whole lot because it's the outro. Alan, hi.
How's it going? It's good to be back. December was and end of November was quite a busy month with my union life. And so it seemed like everyone wanted to schedule a meeting at like 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock on a Tuesday. So we all know jobs take precedence because they pay me to be there. But I'm glad to be back. It's nice to kind of kick off my new year, and I'm energized to talk about something other than unionism.
I mean, we can always talk USLPA at any given point. So there's that. So, all right. Let's see. Ryan with the snazzy kit that I've seen before. What's up, man?
I'm doing well. Happy to be wearing the Rhode Island FC kit for the upcoming season. And is this going to be the show where I can at least mention that Las Vegas Lights owner Jose Batista has now fallen off the Hall of Fame voting ballot because he could not get above 5% voting? Can we have that headline written for tomorrow?
Almost Hall of Famer Jose Bautista takes over the Las Vegas Lights.
He got more votes than Bartolo Colon, though.
The big wasn't sexy enough. John, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing well. I'm just shouting out the single human being who voted for Brandon Phillips to get into the Hall of Fame. That's my
I
spirit
love
animal.
them. I
Yeah,
love
yeah.
them. I get. Hey, listen. Today has been my baseball USL day. And listen, I'm just saying, Brandon Phillips probably isn't a Hall of Famer, but that was some of the most entertaining second base I've ever watched. It wasn't always good with the bat, but the second base defense was exquisite.
Yep, that's my guy.
Yeah, I love Brandon. Listen, there's a whole lot we need to get into because we are 3 minutes into this. And I want to just go ahead and say thank you to our patrons, John Hunt, Frank Anthony, Aaron J., and Christopher Cohn. You guys are helping us financially. Thank you so much with that. And with that financial help, hey, next week we got some fun stuff being put out there. Some changes coming to the USL show, and finalizing a new show for here. And with your help, we are able to do that. If you want to contribute, it is patreon.com / the USL show. Straightforward, and it's also going to be in the description or in the live chat if you are here. So yeah, we are super excited to go forward with that. Yeah, these guys, people who are, so Ryan, John, and Alan have seen the preview for what's coming out in the next couple days, and needless to say, we're pretty stoked.
It's kind of really cool. Like, I don't want to overhype, but it is cool that I'm affiliated with a thing that is growing like this. So I'll be wry in that, but yeah.
It's going to be fine.
If that's how every single review for the USL show is, I mean, I'm all in on that. Like, watch the USL show. It's going to be fine.
My reaction to watching the Ant-Man film. It's fine.
It's a 3-star podcast, y'all, and that's all we want to do.
Oh man, I hate to have fun and crack up and move on to the topic that we have to, but it does need to be talked about. So there was a news article that came out yesterday, and I want to make sure that I have this right. WBIR out of Knoxville, their NBC affiliate. They released an article that was talking about Mark McKeever, who is the head coach of One Knox, who has former stops with Mississippi Bria and Des Moines Menace, both in USL League Two. And he was with One Knox when they were League Two, and then went up with them when they made the jump. There were substantial allegations, and they were initially said that they found enough substantial proof of these allegations just kind of verbal abuse towards the players. Nothing of illegal manner from what they reported in here. So no physical abuse, no outright hazing or anything of the sexual abuse manner. But still, the quote that we put onto our socials was basically that it's as players WBIR spoke with said they don't know how McKeever still has a job, and if it happened at any other job, it would be unacceptable. Obviously, we don't know the exact details of each claim. While there's some little bits and pieces there, we can talk about that in a little bit. It seems like this is some pretty heavy stuff going on here, and the fact that the USL or USLPA never kind of brought it to light is interesting to me. I don't know who wants to open it up, but floor is y'all's.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go ahead and lead off with the fact that the optics here that McKeever behind the scenes was engaging in what was termed as light physical shoving, was engaging in verbal abuse that, according to the article, was worse in the mind of the league than that shoving. He was forced to do sensitivity training, and that none of this came out. The league didn't really have the accountability for the fact that something major was going on behind the scenes. I think it is a bit troublesome. Optimally, these clubs in this league are trying to promote a product that is transparent. They're trying to paint a picture of clubs that are built for their communities, right? And they need to be open about things that are going wrong, about ways that they're trying to improve themselves. Because then when it gets to, 5 months later, this is leaking out as a news article, it's a major deal. When you have unsourced players saying they can't believe that he didn't lose his job, it gives the vibe that there's something going on here that is beyond the control of the club, and they've let this get beyond their purview. What he did clearly wasn't right in context, and I think that it's been mishandled in the way that it's been addressed.
Yeah, I think if this wasn't handled, or if this was handled to people's standards of how it should have been handled, it might not have been leaked to news sources, right? Like that's what I'm reading into it, that USL thinks that they did enough, and it seems as if maybe the team feels like they've done enough, but it seems as if there's folks involved that are shocked that things are kind of maybe brushed under the rug isn't the right term, but handled internally, but maybe not to the liking of the people involved. Otherwise, why go to the press, right? If you feel like you've gone through the process and the process was reflected well, and you feel that, hey, maybe the guy was talked to and he went through what he needed to go through and things are moving in the right direction. Yeah, maybe it's like, hey, not everything needs to be public. But it seems as if there are people who are still upset with the outcomes. And, I know that there are folks who, follow coaches who enjoy coaching styles. And, we go through the laundry list of USL coaches, and there's just as many different styles of coaching that exist. But I do think there's a line that needs to be upheld. And, tier 2, I think I would assume there's 3 tiers based on the description of the article, that, tier 2 is like a middle tier that, we're not talking about egregious acts, right? We're not talking about, Draymond Green is your coach and he's trying to, murder you on a basketball court. But I do think that there needs to be some sort of accountability. And it seems as if those who were involved, or I wouldn't say victims, but I guess victims of this abuse, maybe didn't feel like the outcomes were matched. The punishment didn't match the crime, right? And I get that, you want to give people second chances and you want to allow people to grow and improve. But I think as a head coach, I think we need to be beyond that, right? We need to be like, a head coach is in a learning position in that instance. So, I think it is problematic, and it is another question of what is the league doing?
And like reading further into that article, they mentioned the halftime during a game on April 21st of last year. So at the early start of the season, the McKeever had to be separated from forcefully bumping into another player within the locker room and from coaches and other players. And it's amazing that it just never became known until here article nearly at the start of the next season, and you really have to ask, like, what went on behind the scenes throughout all of last year? How did this not come out of the club? How was it just kept internally? And if it's still being brought up here, why is McKeever still in the position that he is in?
Something to kind of talk about. You mentioned the April incident of basically the altercation of like players and coach had to be separated. This in of itself is not unusual. I think I know for me personally, I've gotten several communications of this happening, and it's not terribly uncommon for a player and a coach to get into it, may even have a physical spat between the two before or like halftime of a match or even post match. That in of itself is not unusual. Is it good? No. Obviously, you don't want your coaches and players to fight, but when you're dealing with really like somewhere like 20 to 25 grown adults who are trying to compete, eventually somebody's temper is going to flare between two people, right? I think what makes that so notable is that date is not a one-off instance. It is a pattern, allegedly, right? And I'm someone who has seen McKeever in person. Mississippi Bria is awful close to where I live, and I went and watched them whenever Birmingham Hammers were playing there. And he's a hothead on the sideline, but we've seen a lot of hotheads on the sideline, right? It's that in of itself. Like we can probably name the coaches that we say that it's like, oh, they get hot and they are loud, they're obnoxious, they'll give fans the bird, they'll scream at their players. I mean, Bob Lilly is a USL meme in the fact that he's a hothead, but this has never come out, right? Which I think is where we need to make the distinction here. Screaming and coaching is not the same as what's happening here. This is not young players are soft, they're whatever. Because listen, people go up to Pittsburgh and they may not like what Bob Lilly's doing, but they're winning and they're not coming out with abuse claims. They're just saying we got yelled at for an hour at the halfway line because that's what happens. That's why, to me, this feels very different.
I think what's fascinating with McKeever is that he's somebody who coached in the college ranks for almost 20 years. He was kind of like the go-to guy if you needed a top-level League Two manager. Like Bria, Des Moines Menace, those are two of the best-run, most consistent clubs in League Two over the years. And then One Knox essentially hand-chose McKeever as the guy to help lead them in that transition to League One. This is somebody with a real reputation in the lower leagues, someone who's coached a lot of good players. I think Niall McCabe and Lewis Hilton, Paco Craig, when they were in school. The fact that this is only coming out now, it raises questions of, has there been a pattern in the past? What set it apart that this was the moment where it snapped, if there was a pattern? I think it speaks well of the fact that even if the communication was poor, the players felt empowered to speak up about this, and that the league came in and forced the sensitivity training, that One Knox at least is making the public statement saying, listen, we're going to rework how we want to run this atmosphere in the club. So I think there's interesting things about the history, but the fact that there is the institutional way that the club and the league can respond to these sorts of issues, that's a positive sign for sure. Kayla, you're on mute.
As soon as I started talking, I just yeah. When you talk about the laundry list, I mean, a couple of other guys like Thomas Van Kaziel was one of his guys. Now Moses Mensah, both at Des Moines and at One Knox, those guys are now in the league that were under his tutelage. And Like there's some real players that came from under him, it and there were players that followed him from Des Moines to One Knox and stayed with him through the professional ranks, and it's one of those things that people stay with him, and I don't want to get to reading into it, right? But it does make you think that maybe this some of these things are truly aimed at certain players, and if you're not on the in list, you're on the it list, which I think almost, and this is again me not saying that Bob Lilly does any of this stuff. Okay, this is where I need to be very apparent here, right? But everyone is on Bob Lilly's it list, and also simultaneously in the in list because everybody is treated equally there, from what it sounds like, right? It's that is kind of what it is, and I think what's interesting here, though. And I don't want to just say like geography wise, but Chattanooga had a very similar incident, like very similar issues like a year, 2 years ago now. And I'm not saying like East Tennessee for League One is, recipe for toxic coaches, but I do think that just kind of in general, seeing coaches at the League One level get in trouble for this, and actually it seems like they have somewhat repercussions for their actions. I think 5 years ago in the USL, we would not have had that. I think those coaches are still coaching, assuming they were decent coaches.
Yeah, and just one quick note, the fact that this team is keeping around players who added up to about 2/3 of their minutes played last year, that probably means that there's something deeper that McKeever is able to kind of access emotionally. And I think it speaks to the theory that you have about maybe it was just a couple of targeted players. It's an interesting scenario, and I'm curious to see if we end up getting more details at any point.
Yeah. Anybody else on McKeever?
I mean, it's a pretty old school type of, in the music world, there are music educators who that's their approach is like beat you down to build you back up. And I think that there just also might be I don't want to say generational because that's not the right word, but just like a different approach to how someone coaches. And while tier 2 abuse is not, acceptable, I think whiplash. I think if you look at some of the older school of coaching, there's some athletes who think that maybe that's something acceptable, right? Like that style of coaching is something you can buy into even. Like I need that motivation. And maybe some people can react to that who don't see it as a negative. And maybe this is also an educational piece, right? Like that sometimes things that are acceptable to a large group of people are unacceptable to others. And we need to, to respect that there are some people who do buy into that and maybe won't see a problem with this type of, verbal or even somewhat physical altercations. That's just a coach being a coach, right? Or as a player, you're like, yeah, like get in my face, yell at me. Some people might respond to that, but it is very old school. I've seen educators, like not just coaches, like educators do that to folks. And it's like, I think it's gross, but there was certain groups had established that this is kind of the vibe and the culture. And to echo John's point of One Knox being responsive to that of like, hey, maybe we need to look at what kind of culture we're building. And the fact that, it was substantiated means that people were like talking about it and felt comfortable talking about it, as opposed to like, why talk about it? It's not going to change anything. And so I do want to say that there's some positive outcomes that people are willing to substantiate and talk and be open about what's happening so things can get better.
Yeah, this is just getting me down my own personal rabbit hole. I've seen it myself. You go teach at these places and you go coach at these places. I go to a marching band camp that I teach at every single year, and I had a group of trombone players that came up to me and was like, I need you to scream at me, get in my face and make me feel worthless. And they asked that of me. And I'm like, why would I do that? They're like, because we won't listen to you otherwise. And then there was another person, like, if my voice went above like 60 decibels, they were like shut down. And it was like, whoa, okay. And it's still the same thing in the coaching world. You just got to know. You just got to know who you're talking to. And that's what the best coaches do. They know who all their people are, and they know how to differentiate between those people. So, yeah. Let's see. Anybody else on McKeever before we move on to some big roster moves? No? All right. I want to just kind of just talk about real fast in League One. Hey, listen, Spokane kind of doing things right now. I am a big fan of what Spokane is doing early on in their roster construction. And right now, the big prize that it was on the table, hey, Luis Heel. Dude was a stud for Omaha, and now he's going up to Washington, and that's a great centerpiece to build a club around.
He really is a player that creatively, I think he had 9 assists last year for Union Omaha. What he does in the middle creatively, he's a fairly good dribbler as well. He takes a ton of touches and can really dictate the game. That's going to be definitional for this Spokane team. He's an elite piece in League One. He's joining, at least in Derek Waldeck at fullback, an elite piece in League One who can really give you some dynamism. They've got some interesting pieces in a minimum in the wide areas. If you think about like a Morgan Hackworth, who really hasn't got time in a hot minute in the championship, but brings that pedigree. Colin Fernandez, brought in from FC Tulsa in the central midfield, really solid player. They've got some good pieces with really good track records right now, and Heel is just going to be the one who kind of brings it all together and galvanizes that team.
And not to mention, they had signed a former MLS All-Star in Romain Metanier earlier today as well. That would be just a huge amount of experience who could potentially captain the side this season.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to pick on them. I don't know why this ends up, but listen, we're getting real deal roster moves here, and we're back on the Central Valley train again of they're behind. And I don't want to be mean, but I mean, when you are pulling Luis Heels, when you're pulling former MLS All-Stars, when you're pulling real deal championship talent that didn't get a chance to prove themselves, that are looking to get back to the championship or higher level, I mean, I love what they're doing early on. Do they obviously need more players? Duh, they do. But early on, when you're building a club with veteran leadership and people who are hungry. And I think that's always a recipe for success.
I mean, something else we have to remember is with teams, they're going to, instead of a flood of news, they're going to let things trickle out to build momentum into a season. Like, your club probably has more people that they've signed than they are letting on, but they're not going to announce them all, because if you're going to announce them all in December, how are you going to hype up the rest of the offseason? But yeah, I don't think there's probably only a few teams that are like, we're good. Like, everyone else is like, we could add a piece here, we can add a piece there. There's still some folks out there that are moving around that might need a place to land. But, preseason's starting right around the corner. But if it makes you feel better, at least USL has a schedule. I'm still waiting for the NWSL one to come out so I can start planning my weekend. So, like, at least there's, kickoff times now. So now it's just down to roster news. And so teams are going to, I think, hold some cards back to hype up some folks into through the rest of the offseason and the preseason.
And if you're going to talk about hyping up USL 1 moves, you certainly should not look any further than Cameron Lancaster going to Lexington and USL 1, arguably one of the most important signing that club has made in its short history.
Yeah, to me, this one makes a lot of sense. I know some people were thinking he's going to land in USL Championship somewhere, maybe, or just outright retire. I don't think anybody thought he would drop down a level, but think about it like this. I mean, Lexington's a club that is going for it right now. And he can still live in his home in Louisville or wherever he lives. You know, if he lives just outside of Louisville, he can just drive over to Lexington. It's not that far of a drive. And he doesn't have to move house. He gets to stay in a place that seems like he's very comfortable. And if Lexington plays their cards right and plays to Cameron Lancaster's skill set that he has now, post operations, basically, if they fit their style to the new Cameron Lancaster, he's going to score all of the goals. Like, it's going to be ridiculous.
I think the thing with Lancaster at this point, like obviously he was someone in that 2018 to 2021 corridor who scored for fun. It was 20 goals a season. He was dominant. And he was dominant because he was quite fluid in his movement. He contributed in the press. He was part of that Louisville team that had a real sense of style and speed to their game. Given the fact that he's played 15 games total in the past 2 seasons, he's had the injury problems. That can't be the player you're expecting. And the beautiful thing about the setup of this Lexington squad right now is that they don't need him to be that player. Even up front, he can be the kind of riding the back shoulder of the defense, poaching in the box kind of player. As you get Nates Diouf, as you get Azad Liadi making those more clever and active runs. In terms of the service you're getting, like Tate Robertson is unbelievable at getting those balls into positions that Lancaster is going to be able to take advantage. Beyond the fit on the field, like just the fact that you're Lexington and you're signing a player with a real argument to be one of the best USL players ever, period. That's a statement of intent that means something. And it's just another example of the way this club is building for 2024.
This is Lexington's Zava signing.
Well, hopefully it goes better than that.
we saw what Dos Santos did when he came down to Union Omaha and scored 13 goals last year. I think that you're going to see some of these guys start to make that move of maybe they're not quite getting that look in championship, or maybe they're a step behind, but they still have something of value. I think you're going to start seeing, just like recently we saw an uptick of guys moving from League One to Championship and being successful. I think we're also going to see some guys who still have some gas in their tank who want to play for a League One side and get paid to play soccer still and do it at a level that is successful. I'm trying to think of, why can I not think of his name? Miguel Ibarra was another guy
Yes.
that dropped down and had some success, and this is a guy who was playing at a much higher level earlier in his career. Like, we're seeing guys extend their careers into League One, not necessarily like retirement league, but like they're playing at a high level and they're finding that level that's appropriate for them based on where they are injury wise or age wise. And that's hopefully what we see from Lancaster, because, I think he still has some stuff to give, and maybe he wants to end a little bit on his terms where he's able to make it a full season. So I'm super interested to see if this is a trend in the future where guys are coming to League One as a way to extend their career.
And Lancaster's only 31.
If you were to ask me, I would have told you like 36. If I did not look it up prior to this earlier this week, I would have thought 36. He's been around forever. I want to answer something real quick from Smith Video Production. Will Lexington make the move up after they get their stadium built? There has been some not so quiet conversation of Lexington being a prime moving up team. But there's also been conversation of League One is trying to stabilize themselves and not just being a jumping up platform of you come here just to move up, in weird promotion, no relegation, only if you feel like it situation. That said, with Lexington having a super like a Super League team, I wouldn't be shocked if Lexington makes the jump eventually. We'll have to see. They're definitely a prime candidate if they have their own stadium. That's for sure.
It's going to be an interesting little stretch here just on the macro level for League One. 2025 is looking like it's going to be gigantic in terms of expansion, like Brooklyn, Portland, Santa Barbara. I think Antelope Valley and Naples. I might be forgetting one. If they actually do pull off that many expansion efforts, it kind of takes the sting out of Lexington leaving, especially when Lexington comes from part of the country where League One is A-okay.
There's also the conversation of Chattanooga Red Wolves moving up, which I don't know if that's still a thing, but there was a conversation. So we'll see. I'm still not sold on Santa Barbara being alive, if I'm being honest. We'll see. A couple of other big moves. This one was when we all saw the big Tom bomb that came out of nowhere of Albert Dequa going to Rhode Island FC. Cano Smith and Michael Parkhurst have been putting together a fantastic year one lineup. One of the best expansion rosters, at least starting 11s that I can remember. It's hard for me to think of a better one. And there's nothing better than a staple signing of taking the league MVP, Golden Boot winner from a conference rival. And I mean, it's a real statement of intent on an area of the pitch that wasn't really an issue. They had really good scores already. And then they said, how about we get the best one? No biggie. Incredible signing from Kano and Co.
Yeah, I mean, Dequa, what more can you say? The guy had 20 goals and won the Golden Boot last year. I think that almost undersells the fact that he, even when he isn't scoring at such an amazing clip, he really is a physical player who contributes that grit you want up top in a lot of different systems. He did the job that Bob Lilly required of him in the press, which is no mean feat for a forward. I think he has some instant chemistry with JJ Williams. And Williams is a player who brings probably a bigger, more physical frame, but he's quite mobile. He's going to be a really good hold-up partner for Dequa. Dequa on the slide had no assists last year. Williams had 9, I want to say. That tandem is going to be amazing. And you've got the possibility of Mark Doyle, who they got from Ireland, Noah Fuson, who was good for Forward Madison and blew up in Next Pro. That attacking line is amazing, and it's just part of an expansion effort that has been so impressive and feels so intentional with the way they're building this roster right now.
And the 5th game of the year, Rhode Island and Dequa will be hosting the Pittsburgh Riverhounds.
I wish he was going to Pittsburgh.
That's not until September 7th.
At that point, the sting's gone. If USL powers that be would have known earlier, I mean, that would have been opening game spiciness. Oh, that would have been so good. I'm excited. Dequa is a player, and I've talked about this a lot. You don't see a lot of his prototype in really anywhere in the world. I mean, 20 goals, 0 assists. I mean, when you say a player has 20 goal contributions, you don't expect it to just be 20 goals. Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. He takes the Carmelo Anthony approach of I score, I don't pass. But I'm really intrigued to see how it works alongside, because what you mentioned, I mean, we always kind of say as a joke, it's not like he's not involved outside the play. He's not the stand up top, hoof it long Dequa down there somewhere. Like, he can do that, but he will body someone. He'll make the run. He'll put pressure on defenders and pull defenders and basically just create space for someone else to score while he's not getting an assist. He's part of the reason someone else scores a lot of times. And I'm really intrigued to see if that pays off, especially for a guy like JJ Williams, who, Cal Jennings is a great player, great striker, but he doesn't make the same kind of runs that Dequa did, especially off the ball runs that really pulled space for JJ to score. I'm really interested to see how much this combination, can put on the scoreboard. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, we got the hint of it there with Dre in the chat. But where are you thinking Rhode Island is sitting in the playoffs? I know I just had the power ranking piece out where I had them essentially fifth in the East. This feels like a team that's going to be in the mix for home field at a minimum, but I don't know what the vibe is elsewhere.
I mean, I wanted to use one of our, when we get closer to the season, we always do our 90, 50, 10% predictions. And one of my predictions was going to be a 50% chance I would put Rhode Island at having a home playoff game this season. So now I'm going to have to find another 50% prediction for that show. But yeah, John, I completely agree with you. I would certainly do Rhode Island hosting a playoff game this season as something well within their reach.
I'm worried on Rhode Island's front that their starting 11's incredible, but we don't know what they have we do know what they have in the 18, but I don't know if I'm as believing in that. An injury could kind of derail this a little bit. And I think they're going to be contending for a top 4, but when you're looking at a Louisville City who has gotten their 2 all-league players. When you look at North Carolina, who's not getting enough love whatsoever for the amazing job that they are doing in building a team.
Other than for me.
Hashtag ad backfield.com. Check out the latest power rankings from John. And, you have that. You also have Tampa Bay, who ain't going nowhere. Like, they look great. And who knows who else is going to be making a jump. If you told me that Rhode Island had a solid season finishing 5th or 6th because, those teams made a jump and someone else made a big signing that we weren't prepared for, that wouldn't shock me either.
If you really want to kind of look at how Rhode Island's going to do this season, 3rd game of the year is away at Tampa Bay. Then the 4th and 5th game of the year is hosting Charleston and hosting Pittsburgh. So just after a start of against 2 Western Conference teams, New Mexico and Monterey, they're basically thrown into the flames of the Eastern Conference of its toughest teams.
Yeah. Now,
speaking of Charleston, real quick, I want to sneak another signing in here that we had not talked about before the show, but that's Jackson Conway coming in at the striker spot for a team that had just lost Augie Williams. That's going to be a massive get. Conway, someone who was good with Atlanta too, kind of classic Atlanta United, never really got that full shot up at MLS, but I think he's going to be awesome back in the USL.
I do want to just answer this about Kano. Kano has had some coaching experience. So we talked to him on the show last year. Birmingham Legion have one of the smallest, if not the smallest, coaching staff. So despite him being an assistant coach, he was one of 3 coaches on staff at Birmingham, and all 3 split their delegations equally. The only thing that he really didn't do was in the middle of the game tactic stuff. But even then, half of that was still him anyway. He did a lot of coaching. Really, Birmingham Legion had 3 head coaches, not 1. That's how they kind of played. They do their thing by committee. So Kano has more first head coach experience than most coaches coming into this. Conway is a stud. He is so good. And it's another player that, gets released by Atlanta United that doesn't really get their chance, despite they really should. And Charleston just feels like the perfect place for him to end up. I mean, you lose Augie Williams. He's not a 1-for-1 replacement, but for where this team is going and a slight reshifting that they're going to have to do after losing a lot of their attacking face of the club, I think he's the perfect predecessor. After the predecessor, successor. I don't ask me for vocab; it doesn't work.
I'm just realizing also they've got Tristan Treger in the mix there still. Those 2 were fantastic in combination in Atlanta. Like, you love seeing that under Ben Pierman, somebody who, no offense to probably Stephen Glass would have been the manager, but I think Pierman has a little bit of a better idea what to do with an offense.
True. Yeah, I I want to talk about one that we kind of knew about and we're waiting for it to patiently drop as Jordan Farr makes his way down to Tampa Bay. And this is some real conversation to have here because he fell out of favor with Marcina for whatever reason. And Tampa Bay, they re-signed Sparrow? Sparrow?
No,
Question mark?
Sparrow's a free.
No,
They got Breno back, but Sparrow is
Breno.
just in the wild. Yeah.
Okay, so I had this switched. So they bring back Breno, who was kind of the GK2 despite starting as GK1 in the season. And Jordan Farr, I mean, we I don't want it to sound like it was a small stretch. I mean, the year where San Antonio won it all, he was unstoppable. You couldn't get anything past him. It took a worldie to beat him. And Tampa Bay, I saw the kind of discourse online. I think it was from Mike Pendleton. Basically said, "Hey, typically Tampa Bay's defense is really, really good, and our goalkeepers don't have to work that hard. Now we have an all league goalkeeper. What does this mean for us?" And I am so excited, and I really hope that this means Jordan has more first team opportunities without fear of it being snatched from underneath him. Because if there's anything we know about Marcina, the man is ruthless and no one is safe.
And he moved on an undisclosed fee, by the way. So it'd be interesting just to kind of know behind the scenes. I'm sure, or they have their reasons for keeping it private. But yeah, it's just interesting to not have that be published, just to see what spending power did Tampa Bay have to bring Farr to Outlang.
It was a Jack in the Box munchie meal. Was
Leftover case of
Free
Iron
ticket.
Brew from Neil Collins.
Autographed, of course. Free tickets to the Flamengo Philadelphia match. Not good tickets. He still had to sit up really high, but they were free.
Just in terms of the whole dynamic going on here, if you're Tampa Bay, who really has had good goalkeeping no matter what, to get someone like Farr in the mix is an unreal coup for them to have arguably the best goalie in the league back there in net. It's going to be a bit of an adjustment for him just because the style that San Antonio ran was so distinct and so unique and was really demanding on everyone in the back line, goalkeeper included. In terms of the distribution as well, he's going to be expected to be a lot more possessive with the ball at his feet. And Tampa Bay isn't extreme in that regard, but San Antonio really just wanted him to get the ball downfield immediately. Based on Farr's run in Indy, he has that skill set in his bag and he won't struggle, but it is something to watch early in the year. San Antonio, we might need to have that discussion. With Maloney retiring, Fabian Garcia kind of leaving out of the blue, PC isn't going to be back. Farr happening now, as we all kind of expected after the Marsman controversy. I don't dislike the core of this roster, obviously, with Tainter, with Jorge Hernandez. Bringing in Juan Agudelo, big move. He's fantastic. They filled out their roster with a lot of unknown players, guys who are MLS journeymen, guys who you've never heard of from far-flung corners of the world. It's a small squad right now. I don't know what to think about San Antonio.
This is all Berhalter's fault because they lost to Slovenia on their pitch.
In the most attended game ever at Toyota, yeah.
That was Farr's selling point. He saw the U.S. lose on home ground, and he said, "That was it. Get me out. Just can't do it anymore." Now, Alan, do you have anything to say about this before I go?
I was like completely shocked that this would happen, but that's a good get for Tampa Bay. And this happens with like trades and with signings is how do you replace that guy? And I'm not sure there is necessarily a replacement for Farr, but you have to Farr was on his way out anyway, it seems. So maybe they were planning ahead for this, and maybe they feel like they have their replacement already in what they want to accomplish. But yeah, Tampa Bay, it's a good get for them, and even if it is a little expensive, you would think that it's well worth it for Tampa Bay to go out and get a quality keeper like that, because those keepers don't come available all that often, because they are, I mean, we see game in, game out, like how influential a good goalkeeper can be, right? Oakland's amazing run a couple years ago in the playoffs, was it Paul Blanchett going from goalkeeper 3 to, essentially standing on his head, keeping Oakland afloat during like a pretty deep playoff run, and essentially one retake penalty kick away from possibly eliminating OC the year they won. So, these goalkeepers are incredibly important, especially when it comes to playoffs where goals are, at a premium. And, guy like Farr can hopefully, for Tampa Bay, take them a little bit further and maybe put them back into the championship game.
And in the last 5 seasons, Tampa Bay hasn't conceded over 40 goals in the league.
Good defense. I want to mention something that Harry put into the chat of, is Tampa getting the Indy Farr or the San Antonio Farr? I don't think that either Farr were that different. I have this feeling that Farr, he's not this crazy shot stopper. Like, he's a really good shot stopper, don't get me wrong, but he's not like your Paul Blanchett, where they call him the wall, mainly because like somehow he just everything just seems to hit him. Like, he's an incredible shot stopper. And you also have guys like Rios Novo, Coque Vegas, who are basically midfielders that are allowed to wear gloves, right? Like, they are really good players. Jordan Farr, game wise, now we can have a conversation about physically, but he's not a sexy player, right? And he doesn't play the ball at the back like you expect from a Rios Nova, who does re-sign for Phoenix, or a Coque Vegas. We're not looking at that. You're not looking at this insane shot stopper of a Nate Steinwasser or a Paul Blanchett. The thing that Jordan Farr does better than just about everybody else in the league, his positioning is immaculate. He has immaculate positioning, which makes it look like all the saves he does are really easy, because he makes them easy because he has incredible positioning. And then for some reason, other coaches are like, he didn't make this save, or he didn't do this, so therefore he's not good. He didn't have to do that crazy thing that another goalkeeper had to do, because he cut out the middleman. His positioning is just so good. And it happened in Indy, where they bring in, was it Bobby? No, it wasn't Bobby Edwards. Who was the guy that was like 6'8", that was like ridiculously tall, that they brought in for no reason? And then like Evan Newton was there, and he got blocked out by him because he just won Golden Glove. And it always seems to happen where Jordan Farr is not believed in, because he doesn't have the sexy attribute to him. He doesn't at that point didn't have the Golden Glove. Now he does, and I think he's going to fit in so well with this Tampa Bay team, because what he does in just positioning wise is just so good.
Yeah, speaking to that final season in Indy, where Farr had been with the team since I think their last season in the NASL. Correct me if I'm wrong, Indy fans, but this is somebody who served his time as a backup. When he finally got the spot, he was worth about 4 or 5 saves above, or a goal saved above average in that campaign before he moved to San Antonio. He's quite good. Like, even if it isn't that peak that he had in 2022, you're getting a top level goalie. San Antonio, by the way, they do have the replacement, Pablo Cisniega, someone who's kind of a MLS backup for a while. Seems like he'll be decent, but will he recapture the highs? Doubtful.
He wasn't the most impressive with Charlotte FC during his time there, and only 1 appearance for Crown Legacy as well.
Also, to John Fuller's thing real fast, I did watch Jordan Farr eat a whole banana and just leave the peel beside the post during the match, and it was absolutely hilarious. As he was walking off, we were like, Jordan, you left your peel. And it was like, oh, my bad. Ran back and grabbed it before he went to the locker room. I mean, I love that guy. I absolutely adore Jordan Farr over everything he's worth. He's incredible.
Is he like laying a trap like it's Mario Kart? Like, what is this?
I mean, at this point, I mean, it was right beside it, like just this empty peel, and we're like, what? Don't know. He's hilarious, dudes. Yeah. I'm excited to see what comes of this. Also, speaking of other goalkeeper, when we talk about positioning, something I wanted to talk about, it was and this was a signing a long time ago of our friend Phil Baki's our El Paso with Justin Waite joining. And we kind of discovered, or we kind of got into it, his numbers, Waite's numbers at Pittsburgh, despite being on one like the best defensive teams in USL history, not being very good. But then if you look at his Jamaican like underlying numbers, he's incredible because he's starting for the Jamaican national team like a fair amount. And speaking of positioning, I want to know what Bob Lilley is telling him to do positionally, because it's way different than what he's doing in Jamaica. And his numbers for Jamaica are substantially better. And I'm very intrigued to see how they treat him in El Paso, because when he was with Jamaica, he was asked to basically just be on the outside of the 18 and drop back well into the box. Meanwhile, Pitt had a like low line. They kept that low line. They weren't a high line team where they weren't trying to get the offside trap. They were just trying to stop you from scoring. But they had him playing high. And so there was like no gap between the two, and it made his positioning weird. So when they got scored on, it was like, how do you concede that? I'm really intrigued to see what El Paso does and see if they have him doing more of the Jamaican thing than he was doing in Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh's also very good about denying most shot opportunities in a way that really suppresses what you're seeing as a goalie. I think it tends to have a weird statistical effect where Pittsburgh goalkeepers kind of always look like they're subpar, even if they're really doing a good job. He's somebody who's going to shine in El Paso, and that's an El Paso team. Too bad we don't have Phil here. That I think is going to be really fun to watch and really good in 2024.
Yeah, time will tell if he is worth the wait.
That's perfect.
All right, well, there's that. Speaking of like player announcements, I just want to say a shout out to Hartford's people I love their graphics. I absolutely love what Hartford's doing in graphics and teasers. It's some of my favorite things. Some of them, they got a little lazy.
Oh, yeah.
Like Jordan Scarlett, you just put his name on it. But the other ones, like I was doing like real deal deep dives trying to figure it out. Like, good on you. But like, I mean, I love what Hartford's doing with their like teaser graphics. I think they're just so much fun. I wish more teams would do like hints in there, in-depth hints for people to speculate. Just be like, what is this?
When they were getting Enoch Mushigalusa, they chose a side character from the Ahsoka Star Wars television show who I think maybe didn't have a speaking line, who was named Enoch. Like, that's a deep cut of all deep cuts. So credit to their social media team for being a bunch of sickos in the best way.
Yeah, usually it's something lame like hearts of the color of the team that they used to play for.
Right.
So it's nice to see people really flexing some creativity and their creative muscle in some of these, because I'm sure like for some folks it's like they do 18 jobs, and so it's just like I can't think of something creative. So it is nice that there's and the team's willing to let somebody be as creative as they are, because some folks, like if you put any hint, you're like, oh, you're gonna give it away and people are gonna know. It's like people already know, it's fine. Like that's part of the fun of the finding those little nuggets that make it enjoyable to be a fan of the team.
I mean, they could take it even a step further and just instead of just giving information of it, let's give superlatives for each person to say. It's like, oh, this person was a really big fan of the show Ahsoka this past year, or their favorite film is The Matrix, and just add on that sense of just kind of fun, get to know you as a way to tease things.
In high school, they were voted most likely to succeed. And you're like, who is that? Oh man. Yeah, I love it. Speaking of people who are just having fun, Jacksonville, they're having a blast. They have their own podcast now, which if you're listening to that, also Morgan is doing a lot of their like social media stuff, like all their if you're not following USL Jacksonville and also like Morgan herself with all
Morgan
the
is the
stuff that
queen
she
of
does.
USL Twitter.
I love her. But yeah, USL Jacksonville's doing some really good stuff, so check that out. I love when teams are just kind of fun. They let their young creative people be young creative people. It's awesome. It's great. Oh, it's not a oh yeah, thank you, Ryan. The last thing we were kind of talking about today, I always forget when we did or didn't record. Phoenix just can't stop having a sex symbol for a coach, and Danny Stone has been announced as their head coach.
Two strands of thought here. One, I think that Juan Guerra is a more attractive man, but I think that Danny Stone is still the most attractive manager that we've got left in the league. So on that front, happy with it. On the second front, the fact that this is a guy who knows the area, he's done his duty coaching across the league. Given how this roster was basically constructed by the time Guerra left, you need somebody who has a real knowledge of the system that this team was expecting to run. Nobody provides that like Stone. He's got his coaching badges. So from the visual perspective, from the resume perspective, all in on Danny Stone.
And he's a Liverpool supporter, so that's another selling point for me. I like clicked on his Twitter. I was like, okay, I'm probably gonna like him. It is nice to see guys moving up, right? We're not on a coaching carousel. We're not hiring somebody. We're not doing a retread. We're giving a guy an opportunity to step into a club that he, like John said, that he knows, and give a guy who probably deserves a shot at running a team, especially a team like Phoenix, where they're going to demand a high level of excellence. Because of the history of the club and what they've been able to accomplish. And so if that's who they feel is the best shot, that they've done their due diligence as well. They really believe in this guy as a coach. And, a successful Phoenix team is good for USL, whether you love them or hate them, because they're easy to do both or either, right? And so they've really embraced kind of the dark side, and embraced the hate, if you will. And so the league is more fun when Phoenix is competitive.
And when you promote from within, it just speaks wonders to the culture that you've built. I mean, it's hard to argue after coming off of winning the league last year, but to have the faith and the culture that still remains after Guerra had left, I think just speaks volumes towards what they're going to expect Stone to do as a manager here. And I would expect Phoenix to still be a competitive team in the Western Conference this season.
Can I have go ahead, Kayla, go ahead. I was going to say something.
No, please. Random is good.
It's Phoenix related, and it's soccer, but I think we need to slow the brakes on Rising. Trejo out, Arteaga out. A striker is coming. They're not going to let that happen. They've signed a lot of kids who look like they're going to be good. In Rito and Izakar, they've kind of got players who maybe were flash in the pan under Guerra in Oakland. I like the spine, but they're just missing those one or two pieces to really make me feel good, given the fact that the West is looking really tough. And given the fact, let's be real, that Phoenix finished 6th in the regular season and caught fire at the right time. I loved everything about that playoff run, but you could make an argument in good faith that the title patched over a team that wasn't necessarily the best of the best.
Yeah, I do think that's fair. And that's kind of where I was going to go to. I mean, like Damon said, a number 9 is still really needed here. Completely agree. I also think that things are made a lot better now with Rios Novo coming back because I have no idea where they're going to find even close to a replacement for him because so much of their style of play is him and how he plays the ball. And I know people will point to his couple of mistakes, but the goals that he created is so much more than the 2 goals that he allowed by them allowing him to do that. If that was done by a center back, it's forgotten within a couple of weeks. It was a goalkeeper. It's a bigger mistake. People care about him more. Rios Novo is the main reason that that engine ran. And I still think that Phoenix is going to be good. It's hard to see them missing the playoffs, but we also said that 2 years ago. Like, and I'm not saying that this is going to fall off the train and like a Sean Sarah and just out of nowhere just completely discombobulates, but there's still a lot of work to be done. That said, with that too, I still love the project of really buying into the youth. We're going to grow it because if one of those kids click, none of this matters. We just sound like idiots talking about the preseason because we have nothing to go off of. Because all it takes is one of the 15, 16, 17-year-olds to be just an absolute freak. So,
yeah.
Anything else USL related? No. I have one last thing. I love the open tryouts. I love seeing the content from the open tryouts. I think it's great. There's people who get in. Max Flick, I think from North Carolina last year was an open tryout guy. It is a great opportunity to find some local talent to see. And at the very worst, it's a nice fundraiser for the club. And also, it's just a fun experience for the fans. There's people who go out there who are well off the pace. They know that. It's a fun time just to see what level they're really at. I love seeing the content from it. I love seeing the videos. And we are officially into zooming in onto blurred out Pixel Man in the very back saying, which trial list is this? And I love it.
I mean, speaking of great player announcement graphics, Max Flick is certainly probably on my Mount Rushmore of player announcements in the USL history.
Hold on. I'm going to find this. Give me a minute.
If you recall from his announcement from North Carolina FC.
I truly don't, but now I'm excited.
Kaylor knows what I'm talking about. He'll find it. You're on mute.
I'm going to need to find it. It's basically they picked the worst possible graphic that they could have. Let me see does anybody have this is so hard to find now. Where was the announcement graphic? People who don't know. Here we go. Got it. Give me a sec. If you are podcast only, this is horrible for you. It's just awful.
The last name is
that's a 10 out of 10 font. So if you're audio only, imagine if you shove an L and an I very close to one another. What letter does that make? What does that spell in the last name?
But he does it to the max, and that's all you can ask for.
That's a Mount Rushmore graphic unveiling.
They knew what they were doing.
Yeah, once again, shout out to the creatives at the USL clubs because they know what they are doing.
Somebody in the front office was like, that looks like, and they were like, I know. Let me I got to cook on this one. The engagement numbers need it. All right. Any final USL thoughts? I know it was no earlier, but I just wanted to double check. Cool. So, final thoughts for the evening, Ryan.
Yeah, so I mentioned it last week. I've been going through a lot of the Studio Ghibli films. So I watched Spirited Away and My Neighbor Totoro last week. So now I'm moving on to Howl's Moving Castle as my next film to watch. And then obviously the Oscar nominations just got published as well. So I'm excited to see that ceremony coming soon.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta just shout out the Studio Ghibli, just amazing stuff. My total chill vibe movies, so love to hear it. And with Kaylor weirdly running away for a second, I guess I'll just go ahead. Got back on the book wagon a bit, or book bandwagon a bit with the holidays and getting some Christmas gifts as Kaylor is back with a cat now. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I see
Yeah,
what's happening.
cat.
But yeah,
Cat.
yeah, cat. I just read a book by Katsuo Ishiguro called Clara and the Sun. Basically, kind of future dystopian-ish, but you don't really dwell in the world building. But about a little girl who's sick who gets this like robot companion, kind of exploring the themes of like what makes us human, what does it mean to love something if it doesn't have the ability to love you back. Really deep, really enjoyed it. So good read there.
Oh, that's fun. Alan, did you
Like
go?
a cat.
Yes,
Uh,
cat.
I was going to say that sounds like Flight of the Navigator, but that's for the oldies in the audience who might have actually watched Flight of the Navigator. We watched a crazy movie called I'm Thinking of Ending Things, and if you want to have a fun time watching a movie, don't watch that one because it's like super existential and makes like I said WTF so many times while watching that movie, but it was interesting. RuPaul's Drag Race has restarted. We're now on season 16, so I am in the midst of Drag Race again, which is a fun time. So that's what I've been kind of up to. Yeah, so that's what I've been watching, and yeah, and Kaylor has a cat.
I have a cat.
You know when you're trying to like start a podcast or something and you need to choose a name that is search engine optimization friendly, like you can't choose something that is going to come up with a different result. I'm Thinking of Ending Things is the movie that immediately just takes you to the suicide hotline. Legit. Which, hey, good on Google for that, but unfortunate for the people who tried to make that movie popular.
I mean, not a great name, but also a great name. I guess it works. If you're feeling existential, I guess you're also watching the movie anyway. It's kind of existential almost. Not sorta. I finally watched the Spider-Man No Way Home and the prequel to that one. I hadn't watched them, and I was getting really mad at the fact that the basis of No Way Home is that the universe is collapsing upon itself because one guy had beef with his former boss. I really just couldn't get past it. It's bizarre to me. But it's a great movie, bringing back the old cast, the whole crew. I mean, was it a little bit of just like giving the fans what they want? Yes, but also great. I just love that there was just some good fun humor in it. It was actually surprised. I normally don't like the superhero movies, but I did enjoy that one. I did enjoy those. I have not watched Multiverse yet though, so I need to do that. Oh, and I have a cat, and if you're podcast only, I have the cat right now with me. We decided on a name about an hour ago. We've had the cat since Saturday. It's taken this long. His name is Zulu. That is his name. We went through a lot of names, and we've landed on Zulu. And yeah, he's a stray, super underweight, and so we're trying to get him back to a healthy weight, but he's getting there, and he's as sweet as can be until you're trying to wash the dishes and he wants to join. Dummy.
Did it take so long because you went through the names alphabetically?
We came down to a final 3 list, and then a day later we said we don't like these 3 anymore and erased them. So
I am an advocate of, especially for cats, like you need to live with them for a little while to understand like who they are. I almost said who they are as a person, but that's kind of true. Who they are as an individual animal before you name them. You can't just be like, this is the name. You have to like really get to know the cat and I'm an advocate of that, waiting, like give it some time. You don't have to name them right away. You're not going to call them by name and them come running in. Like they're not a dog, right? The dog, you can force the name upon a dog. Cat, you really got to let the cat give you some hints of what the animal needs to be named. So I appreciate that you gave Zulu time to let their personality out.
And in 10 years' time, that will be a password for a very important account for Taylor, I'm sure.
We also decided Zulu because we also discovered that Zuzu is a word for stupid or idiot or like simpleton. And whenever he's trying to jump into the dishwasher as we're trying to wash things, that's when he becomes a Zuzu. So it's like two split personalities that are very close to each other. So, but for the most part, he just likes to lay in your like on your neck and just sleep. So that's pretty cool. I'm thinking, yeah, the Zulu tribe from Africa. Honestly, we got the idea from like Birmingham City fans that were in my mentions. They were like, you should name him Zulu. And I mentioned it to my wife. She was like, I actually like that name. So works. Yeah, that's where we are. I'm thinking about making this like a USL Pony segment and just have the cat randomly join and then just knock things over and leave. I think we should just bring back the good old days like that. So, but did we have anything else for the show? Anything? No? All right. Hey, keep an eye out on the socials, new stuff coming. If you haven't watched or listened to any of the Kit seasons, highly recommend doing that. People who have been watching have really gotten into it. We've had a few people who have bought some of the kits that we showed off because they had no idea they were even kits. So if you're looking to spice up the wardrobe, get in on that. But unless anybody has anything else, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And for the last time of the night, here's Alan's voice.
Thank you for watching another episode of the USL Show.
The USL Show is now proudly part of the Protagonist podcast family. Please go to protagonistsoccer.com to check out more work. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see everyone again next time.